Welcome back to B&B Movie Reviews. This week, Zoe Kravitz tells us to blink twice if we're in danger, and John Woo revisits familiar territory.
Vincent Vega and Beatrix Kiddo celebrate anniversaries this year. We'll take a look at two of Tarantino's classics with a couple of retro reviews. Stay right there, B&B is up next.
Try and stay calm.
John Woo returns with a straight-to-Peacock adaptation of his beloved 1989 classic, trading in Chow Yun-fat and Danny Lee for Natalie Emmanuel and Omar Sy in The Killer. Brad, The Killer,
There
man.
are so many movies named The Killer.
I know, right? But it's so weird. We go back to 1980. Probably even back then, there was still a lot of movies named The Killer. But we go back to 1989. This movie, I mean, you could say that this movie was kind of influential for a lot of young
just a little bit,
and
just
directors.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, like coming up during this era.
I don't know if you could transport yourself back to that time when it was really hard to get a hold of some of these Hong Kong action films. And there was a place out in Springfield, and I would go out there and I would drop like $50 on a copy of The Killer or Hard Boiled or Bullet to the Head.
Yeah.
And they were events when you would get these little VHS boxes. And now, you know, we got everything at our fingertips on streaming.
Yeah, I know. Back then, you're right. It's easy for me to transport myself back to that time because, like, when you get a copy of The Killer or A Better Tomorrow, it's like a gold bar. It's like, okay, you treasure this.
Yeah.
So yeah, and John Woo for me was one of the most influential directors to get me into filmmaking, to kind of start my love of film. Was started with John Woo because I was always kind of like an action junkie, and I was introduced to John Woo in some of his Hong Kong films, and The Killer was right there. Yeah. You know, Chow Yun-fat, Danny Lee.
Yeah, I always thought there were two people on this planet. There's the person who loved The Killer, and there's the person who loved the hard-boiled. And so were you a killer over hard-boiled person?
No,
of course not.
I'm hard-boiled all the way.
We wrote a TV show together. Of course we're both hard-boiled.
Hard-boiled all the way.
Killer's great though.
No, it is, it is. So we come, what, 35 years later?
Let's not talk about it.
35 years later, and we have this remake of The Killer. Now, mind you, this isn't the first time that John Woo has remade his own movie as a TV movie. Yep. He has another movie, for the people who may not know out there, called Once a Thief. Yeah. Once a Thief, that also starred, I believe, Chow Yun-fat. Yeah. He also remade that as a TV movie.
He sure did. He sure did. And one of them's good.
One of them is good. So now he has this Killer remake that has been in development hell. I heard about this movie in the late 90s, early 2000s.
I was really hoping it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it did.
It did. And we have Natalie Emmanuel and Omar Sy, two actors that I like. They don't really have the presence that Chow Yun-fat and Danny Lee have.
It's a different vibe.
And it's a very different vibe. John Woo is an older filmmaker. I mean, that 1989 movie really kind of dives deep into the melodrama of it.
This one does too, Brian. Don't come at me and say that there's no melodrama in this movie.
There's melodrama in this movie, but tonally, this movie feels like it's having a little bit, it's being a little more playful.
Yeah, well, okay, all right, I'll let you say it's playful.
Okay.
But were you listening to the score of this film? It's melodramatic, my friend. It is screaming at you throughout the entire runtime. I had a blast with it. I felt like a little bit like when I was watching May December, the Todd Haynes movie. Where you're like, wait, is this score in on the joke or is this score a joke?
Interesting.
And I do think that in both cases it's in on the joke. I feel like John Woo is being very melodramatic. The opening gun battle, the car chase fight with Omar Sy is fantastic. It's very 2024, so some of the technology is definitely different than it was when the original came out. But it felt very John Woo. Super silly, but you have to embrace that silliness.
Yeah, you do. You do have to embrace that. But I like, especially when we go to Natalie Emmanuel, you talk about the opening, like even when we get to the scenes in the in the nightclub, they kind of like, the inciting incident that kind of sets everything off. He is, to me, again, being extremely playful with his own style of action cinema that I found that I was kind of on board with.
I ended up enjoying it. I was really resisting it. But by that second action sequence I was in, and I never really left. The samurai sword sequence, this is what I want out of my cinema. Natalie Emmanuel just swinging that thing around, chopping dudes up. That's what I'm here for. We're going to talk about Kill Bill a little bit. But yeah, that's what I show up to the cinema for. And too bad I couldn't see this in the cinema. I had to watch it on Peacock.
I mean, but I know we love to watch movies in the cinema, and again, because this movie was in development hell for so long, hearing about the people who were attached to this movie, like Michelle Yeoh, Nicolas Cage. I wanted to see a theatrical remake of The Killer. I don't know. It was a lot of fun. What's your thoughts? What's your rating for this one?
We're the B&B show. If we have a good time at the movies, we give it a B+. If we don't, we give it a B-. I give it a B+.
Okay. All right, cool. I'm going B+ as well. So, I think this is worth your time. It's on Peacock. Switch it on. I think you'll have fun, especially if you're a John Woo fan. You won't be disappointed. All right, those are our thoughts on The Killer. When we return, Zoe Kravitz makes her directorial debut with the movie Blink Twice. Stay right there.
I only had a 29% chance to find a blood stem cell donor, but then we matched. Dear donor, we beat leukemia. Thank you forever and ever.
Save a life at nmdp.org.
Okay, here we go. Jess, Frida, this is my childhood buddy, Cody.
Hey, cheers, ladies.
Cheers. Cheers.
This is Vic, my left and right hand man.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Hey, what's up, man? Heather, Camilla.
How you doing, Mommy?
That's Stan, my security. Tom.
Hi. How's it going?
Hey.
Where's Lucas at?
That's the guy that shot.
Lucas is our resident wonder boy here. He's probably gonna run the world one day.
Nice to meet you guys.
Hey, later. What's up, man? I don't know who that is. This is Frida, Sarah Frida.
Hi. Oh, hi. Cute nails. Thank you.
Frida and Jess get swept up in the charm of tech billionaire Slater King as he introduces them to all his high-class friends in the directorial debut from Zoe Kravitz, Blink Twice. Directorial debut.
Yes.
Is that possible? This does not feel like one.
No, it doesn't. I think I had seen this movie before you got a chance to see it. And I know we had talked about it a little bit, and I had mentioned Zoe Kravitz. And to me, this film feels like the introduction of a new voice in cinema, to me. That's the way I felt watching this movie. I compared it to Jordan Peele when he came out with Get Out.
Yeah.
And this movie kind of, plays around with some of those same kind of, tones a little bit that I think Jordan Peele likes to play around with. And I think Zoe Kravitz does that as well. Now, this movie deals with some very difficult subject matters because at the beginning of this film, I don't know if it was in your screening, but at the beginning of this film.
I watched it at home. I bought the VOD of it. I know the trigger warning is like it's a conversation killer in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I feel like there are some themes that you need to be aware of when you walk into the film. And they're not necessarily, those trigger warnings aren't necessarily for you. They are for a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And I think you do need to go into this movie prepared to see some things that are absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, it goes to some places, and I mean, let's get to. I want to talk more about the direction by Zoe Kravitz, but I also want to talk a little bit about Channing Tatum, because for me,
you mean Slater King?
Slater King, tech billionaire. He's phenomenal in this movie. I think he is really good.
Like, he brings it every movie he's in these days. Like, I'm a huge fan of Channing Tatum.
Yeah.
You know, this movie is a little bit of like an Eat the Rich film. It's speaking to misogyny. It's speaking to racism,
abuse of power,
systemic abuse of power. And how do we escape from it?
Yeah.
And what I love about the movie is that it doesn't fall into, let's just get some revenge on these evil people.
Yeah.
You know, the final reveals of this film, which I will dare not spoil, really sold the whole experience for me. And I think if you didn't have that last scene, I don't know if I would be as in love with the entirety of the film as I am.
You know, it's funny too, because I had talked about, before you went to go see the movie, I had mentioned the final moments in this movie and how I feel like it could be a little bit polarizing. I've
seen that it has been polarizing.
Yeah,
some people like it, some people don't.
Yeah, as far as some of the choices that are made either by Zoe Kravitz or the screenwriter, but
thematically it doesn't work for me if you don't have that last scene.
Okay.
It really doesn't.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I think it does open up the conversation as far as, you know, like how this movie ends up. But yeah, it does seem like it is a bit polarized. And I don't want to give too much away as far as what happens in those final moments. But I know some people it's been a bit divisive.
Yeah, but this movie plays with memory. I think we can say that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Right? And in doing so, creates a fantastic rewatch. The first time you're watching it, you're trying to figure out, like, okay, I know something sinister is happening on this island.
Yeah.
Channing Tatum, or Slater King, is not a swell fella.
Yeah.
There's something dark here.
Yeah.
On the second rewatch, you're actually introduced to that darkness in very obvious ways.
A lot earlier.
And when, on first watch, it's unsettling.
Yeah.
On second watch, it's terrifying.
No, you're right. It's extremely terrifying. And I like the way Zoe Kravitz kind of structures this movie in that way, because it does have that rewatchability factor where when you see it multiple times, you pick up on different things each time. And I like the way that she plays with time. Like when they go to the island, you as an audience member, even with the ladies that are there, they lose track of the days.
Good things don't happen on islands owned by billionaires.
They don't.
It's been that case since The Most Dangerous Game. Okay?
No, it doesn't.
Don't just get on a helicopter and hang out with 5 people on an island.
No, not at all. But I like the way that, you know, she plays with time, where we as an audience also lose track of time, you know, as the days are passing by.
And while we know that something sinister is happening, we're also having fun with these people. The characters are extremely attractive.
Yeah, they are. But then also like the theme of like, and I don't want to give too much away, but we talk about forgiveness versus forgetfulness. And I thought that was extremely powerful when Channing Tatum has a monologue towards the end of this movie. And I think that's where his acting just goes to like another level.
But it's about the response to that monologue. That's the movie.
That's the movie. I thoroughly enjoyed this. This was one of my favorites of the year.
My first watch, I was like, this is good.
Yeah.
My last watch, I was like, this is great.
Yeah. It's one of the best of the year. What's your rating for this?
B+.
Yeah, this is easily a B+. The moment I saw this movie, I got out. Like I said, to me, this feels like it's a new voice in cinema. I don't want to say I'm shocked, because I'm not saying like Zoe Kravitz didn't have this in her.
It's exciting.
But it's exciting. It's exciting to see that she did something like this and what she does next in her career. So yeah, I'm excited. So
I'm there for it.
Yeah, B+. So those are our thoughts on Blink Twice. When we return, we get into our retro reviews. We kick it off with Pulp Fiction, celebrating its 30th anniversary. Stay right there.
After rent and power, I can get groceries. It's sad to say food comes last. Anna from Texas. No one should have to worry where their next meal will come from. Together, we can end hunger. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
If you're buzzed and doing this to make yourself feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive.
But you know the funniest thing about Europe is?
What?
It's the little differences. I mean, they got the same shit over there that they got here, but it's just there, it's a little different.
Example?
All right, well, you can walk into a movie theater in Amsterdam and buy a beer. And I don't mean just like no paper cup, I'm talking about a glass of beer. And in Paris, you can buy a beer in McDonald's. And you know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh man, they got the metric system, they wouldn't know what the fuck a quarter pounder is.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
Vincent explains to Jules some of the little differences he experienced on his trip to Europe in one of the most memorable and quotable scenes from Pulp Fiction, celebrating its 30th anniversary in 2024. Bryan,
Yes.
where were you in 1994? Were you in the cinemas watching Pulp Fiction?
Yes, I was. 1994, I was 16 years old. I went to go see Pulp Fiction, and the crazy thing about it, when I saw this movie, I didn't like it. I actually hated this movie.
Really? I don't think we've ever talked about this.
Yeah, because look, I was 16, I was young. My cinematic palette has changed, it's matured over the years.
If you say so.
Look, at 16, I'm watching Van Damme movies.
Yeah, cinema.
Steven Seagal.
Right, yeah. Out for Justice.
So,
hard to kill the best ones.
There you go. So I hadn't really like watched or discovered movies like this and movies like Pulp Fiction.
I mean, if you watch Hard to Kill the night before you watch Pulp Fiction, you're gonna be like, wait, I'm a little confused.
But it's crazy though, because when the movie came out on VHS, I went to Blockbuster, rented it again, I watched it again, and I loved it the second time I saw it. And I feel like this was the movie that really kind of turned a switch on, like I said, my cinematic palette. I really think that it started with this movie.
Yeah, well, I don't want to brag, Bryan, but I was 14, okay?
Okay.
And the year before Pulp Fiction came out, I took a little bike ride to Suncoast Video at Fair Oaks Mall.
Okay.
And I bought a VHS copy of Reservoir Dogs because they did not care if they were selling it to underage kids. And Reservoir Dogs was the movie that blew my mind.
Okay.
When I watched the opening scene of that movie where they're all around the diner table and they're talking about tips, you know, and Steve Buscemi has his rant and then Harvey Keitel has his rant. I was like, movies can do this? Wait, what?
Yeah.
So I was highly anticipating Pulp Fiction's release, and I begged my dad to take me to see Pulp Fiction. Okay. And I will never forget the gasp my dad made when Bruce Willis kicks down the door and sees what Zed is up to in his basement. And my dad was not happy.
Oh, man.
What a great movie.
I know, going down memory lane. But you know what, you're right though, man. But Pulp Fiction, I think, was a zeitgeist moment in cinema, especially for independent cinema. I mean, even though we had Reservoir Dogs before that, and Tarantino was on the map even as a writer with True Romance and other things like that. But the way he plays with linear storytelling, I think this was like the first movie, at least for me, that, you know, you saw a structure of a film kind of like go in different directions and kind of play with like linear storytelling in a way that I've never seen before. But the thing about this movie, especially on rewatch, and I go back to my first watch where I wasn't as sophisticated to watch this movie at 16, whereas even though it's not linear, it's never hard to follow.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think is the brilliance of Tarantino at that time.
It's hard to explain to a zillennial, these children out here on these streets, what it was like when Pulp Fiction appeared and just took over the conversation. And then like all the imitators that we got, and I watched all of them. 2 Days in the Valley, Albino Alligator, let's go. But none of them could do what Pulp Fiction did. And that screenplay by Tarantino and Roger Avary was such a delicious meal, right? And you would watch the movie, you would buy the screenplay, you would watch the movie with the screenplay.
Yeah.
And we talked about John Woo earlier. I would not have gotten to John Woo without Quentin Tarantino.
True.
Pulp Fiction was my first, black hole movie. You fall into Pulp Fiction, and when you get out the other side, you have discovered so many other bits of cinema.
Yeah.
And it altered my life. I am who I am because of the door I went through with Pulp Fiction.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a great time, and I mean, I don't want to go down memory lane and just focus
We've done it already, my friend.
Nostalgia, but it's just weird how many. Like you say, that black hole that we kind of dived into, and it just opened up so much for us as cinema lovers at that time. And for us, being in our mid-40s now, but I know.
Let's not talk about it.
Let's not talk about that. But to be a teenager during kind of like that indie boom, and to discover all of these different films, and Pulp Fiction being right in the middle of that, I mean, it was just an exciting time to be a film fan. And I don't know, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tarantino, for that.
Yeah. No, thank you, Tarantino. And I don't want to miss Roger Avery. I know that they eventually split, and Tarantino went on to do what Tarantino has done, and Roger Avery's had a different career. But also, it took me to Elmore Leonard's novels, and I don't think you would have Pulp Fiction without Elmore Leonard and Richard Stark, Donald Westlake. The power of the word.
We still have to rate it.
Oh, do we? Okay.
What's your rating for Pulp Fiction?
Well, let me draw this out.
Okay.
It's a B+.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, I think I'm going to go B+ as well.
It remains a masterpiece.
It does. It really does.
2024 lens, there's some things in it. You're like, eh.
Yeah, but I mean, looking at the cinematic language of it and what it means to cinema,
undeniable.
It's undeniable, yeah. So those are our thoughts on Pulp Fiction. Surprise, surprise. But when we return, Tarantino has another film celebrating an anniversary, Kill Bill Volume 2, 20 years. Stay right there. We'll be back with that review.
Every minute counts in a poison emergency. That's why Poison Help is standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in over 100 languages. Save Poison Help as a contact in your phone today. Call your local Poison Center at 1-800-222-1222.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
Was my reaction really that surprising?
Yes, it was. Could you do what you did? Of course you could. But I never thought you would or could do that to me.
I'm really sorry, kiddo. But you thought wrong.
Bill gives his explanation for the heinous acts he committed towards Beatrix in the final confrontation during the climax of the two-part revenge-fueled homage to the classic kung fu and westerns that Tarantino grew up on with Kill Bill Volume 2, celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. Brad.
Yes.
We're getting old, man. Oh, I mean, I remember, again, we talked about Pulp Fiction.
Age is just a number, Bryan.
It's just a number. But man, I literally remember going to see this movie like yesterday.
Yeah, well, do you remember the wait between Jackie Brown and Kill Bill Volume 1? It felt like an eternity.
I know.
Like, when is Tarantino going to make another movie? Stop directing episodes of ER and get on with it.
I know. CSI, he directed a two-part episode. I remember that as well. Yeah, and then we get Volume 1 in 2003, and then this movie, Volume 2, in 2004.
When the trailer dropped of Kill Bill Volume 1, it was with Gangs of New York, the Scorsese film. And I could have just left the theater after that trailer and not watched Gangs of New York, and I would have been a better person.
Okay, that says a lot about Gangs of New York. There we go. Yeah, man. I mean, our mutual friend Darren, that we talked about on the show before, me and him had conversations. Like you said, that gap in between Jackie Brown and Volume 1, we were just like, oh man, Tarantino. Like, can you imagine what he's going to bring to a martial arts film because of his knowledge and his vast knowledge of cinema and like his love of kung fu movies, going dating back to like the Shaw Brothers and him bringing that, and we were just so excited like about what Tarantino is going to do with a martial arts film. And then you see this movie and the way he pays respects to that era of cinema, you know, the Shaw Brother era, like all those old kung fu movies. I thought it was just magnificent in Volume 1.
Yeah.
And then he does something different in Volume 2.
Oh, absolutely. Very different. He goes Giallo. He goes to Italy. And does something very intense and scary. The conversation in 2004, 2002, when Kill Bill? In 2003, when these movies came out, it became like, well, is Tarantino just a guy who references movies? Is that all we're getting here?
Yeah.
And I feel like since then, and we've gotten, you know, Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that is absolutely a part of Quentin Tarantino's DNA.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a filmmaker who makes movies about movies. And, you know, I do think, though, he finds his own stories, his own emotions through these pastiches.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I think it's a crime to say that he doesn't have his own voice, even though he makes movies about movies. Because going specifically to Kill Bill Volume 2, the one thing that I love about this movie is the character of Beatrix Kiddo and her journey. You know, it's all about, you know, getting to Bill.
Yeah, the emotions are forefronted, right?
Yes.
And so when we get the final moments with Beatrix in the bathroom after she's killed Bill, and she is breaking down, and we get to see the performance on Uma Thurman's face, where you see this entire arc of cinema complete, you know, in a smile. I mean, that's what I'm here for.
Because it's about the character and it's about the journey. On that journey, we go through, like you say, different pastiches, different genres of filmmaking, and that's what I love about Tarantino. But it all is centered with Uma Thurman and that performance and the journey that she goes
And he's all about showcasing the performer, right? And, you know, he pulls John Travolta out of the darkness of Look Who's Talking and puts him into Pulp Fiction. And here we have like Michael Parks, who, you know, most people to this day don't know who Michael Parks is. But Michael Parks gives not just one great performance in Kill Bill, he gives two great performances. And every actor, when they have their scene, is the king of that scene. And that's what it feels like. It feels like it feels like different vignettes, and that's not saying it as a negative, because I love all these different vignettes. Michael Madsen in this movie.
Madsen, Daryl Hannah, like all of that stuff, I thought really worked very well in this movie. And like you say, like these are kind of larger than life characters. You know, some may argue that sometimes they may seem a bit cartoonish.
Well, that's okay. I mean, this is melodrama. It's an extreme movie. It's extreme emotions, extreme situations. And he's not trying to replicate reality. And Tarantino has never tried to replicate reality.
No, never. Not at all. And that's the thing that I love about it. Like, even when we go to the stuff with Pai Mei, you know, with her
Gordon Liu.
Gordon Liu.
Two roles in this one, too.
And bringing Gordon Liu, who was in like a lot of those older movies.
Playing Pai Mei.
Playing Pai Mei. But like, you're right. Like, he's not concerned with reality or being like grounded in reality, because even those training sequences with Pai Mei looks so beautiful in the way that he.
For all the unreality in his films, there's an honesty to those emotions, right? And that's, again, what I think is at the center of the best Tarantino movies.
And going to his dialogue, even though, like you say, these movies are playing with different genres, where he's getting a little bit more stylistic with his filmmaking, outside of like Reservoir, Pulp Fiction, and Jackie Brown. He's getting a little bit more stylistic, but his dialogue is still there. I mean, I'm going to say this. Kill Bill is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's my favorite Tarantino. That's another debate that we can have on a different
much longer
day.
conversation.
A much longer conversation. But rating,
B+.
This is a B+ for me as well. Absolutely love it. So those are our thoughts on Tarantino's Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill. We both give those a B+. So let's recap what we discussed today. So The Killer, John Woo's The Killer, we gave that a B+. Then we go to Blink Twice. Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut was a B+. And then our retro review of Pulp Fiction, we gave that a B+. And Kill Bill Volume 2, we also gave that a B+. B+ is all around. There you go, there you go. So thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you at the movies.